You are in fact seeing this right. I am coming to you from my garage. We're not in the basement, but for good reason. I wanted to be able to bring you guys a review of the Evolpow M2B all-in-one Smith machine home gym. Let's go. What's up guys, Kyle with HypertroFit.com, the best place to design your home gym and develop your training program. That is right, I am in the garage for the first time ever. I had to build a makeshift setup so that I could review the piece of equipment that you see behind me. If you've been following this channel this year, you'll know that the basement has been filling up quite quickly, and I have convinced my wife to allow me to use some space in the garage part-time to review some pieces of equipment that I otherwise wouldn't have the chance to because they wouldn't be staying long term. Evolpow reached out to me to review one of their all-in-one home gym solutions, and I had never shopped in this price point before. It's definitely more on the budget side of things. So really, I was curious to see what something in this price range would feel like, given that we are going to be using some lower quality materials, but at the end of the day, what matters is how it feels and how you're able to train. So getting this in over the last couple weeks, over a month now, and having my hands on it to really see what something in this category feels like, I feel pretty confident to be able to give you my review and first thoughts on that today. So let's cover what all we're looking at with the M2B here. Part of what made this so interesting to me is this entire unit is currently on sale for $929. So under $1,000, what are we getting? This is a half rack up front. So you can see we have the J hooks and the spotter arms. We have a functional trainer built in with cable trolleys that do move up and down those front posts. It is plate loaded, as you can see in the back, so there's no selectorized weight stack. And then we also have a Smith machine in here as well. We have pull-up handles at the top, and then in the back, what you'll see connected to the bottom are some dip handles that can come out and attach to the front, as well as a leg press attachment that we can add to the Smith machine bar, which we will certainly cover. There is a landmine attachment up front. There's a foot plate for doing low rows seated on the floor by bringing that cable trolley down to the bottom of the rack. And then we also have a place to store a barbell on the side here. Now, I found out a little bit too late in building this that I actually installed the rear posts backwards, and had I not done that, I would actually be able to add these weight horns to the back of this, which you can see that's what these holes are for in the front there, so that you can actually plate load the back for weight storage. We also obviously have this shelf through the middle and a pegboard in the center, which came with a bunch of, there's plenty more little metal anchors so that you can add your attachments to the pegboard. So overall, the package is very thoughtful and covering a ton of bases here. Now, the real question is, how well does it do it? But from a first glance standpoint, we're talking about a multitude of exercises in an incredibly compact space. For the vast majority of people, you're going to be able to do a ton of different work in this. Now, add in something like a fully adjustable bench, a barbell, which this did not come with. I did supply my own barbell, and then maybe some adjustable dumbbells. You've pretty much got an entire training facility in this footprint. So I'm gonna go piece by piece through this on all of the different aspects of it, show you some B-roll of different exercises with the various implements, and then give you my final thoughts. So starting with the rack itself, this is made of 2x2 14 gauge steel. It's 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters being metric, but essentially 2x2. And it's incredibly light, which is a good and a bad thing. It's good from an assembly and a moving standpoint because it's very easy to move. Not so good from an overall durability standpoint. Now, the website does rate this at being able to hold between 700 and 800 pounds on the safeties and the J-hooks. Personally, I would not feel comfortable going anywhere near that. We'll take a look at some of the stability on this overall, but one of the first things that I really dislike with these J-hooks is that there's no supports underneath them. So it's just a single bent piece of metal. So yeah, while that probably will hold a decent amount of weight, I prefer to have some reinforcement there, and this does not have that. Now, you can certainly upgrade the J-hooks, and there are plenty of others that you could buy that are gonna be more stable in my opinion, but these will get the job done, especially if you're somebody that's not using a ton of weight. Same thing goes for the spotter arms. These are a little bit better in that we do actually have some reinforcement underneath it, but they are really thin on the anchor points. Like, this is just very thin metal. So again, I don't know how much these are truly capable of supporting, but I would imagine a few 100 pounds on here would probably be okay. For me, if I am especially putting my face under something or even just squatting and walking it out, I don't want to be questioning the safety of a piece of equipment. So I would say that if you're using 300 pounds or less, it's not really gonna be an issue. As you start to climb over that 3-plate mark, that's where I might be getting a little bit leery on this lighter gauge metal. Now, that being said, we do have plenty of adjustment points. There is a wide amount of space through these holes, so we don't get a ton of micro adjustments, but you'll be able to find something that works pretty comfortably. For me, at 6'1", I can get into a comfortable squat position with the J-hooks at this height. And this is actually as high as you can put them. So in order to rack the bar, you need to have the cables out of the way. And this is as high as the functional trainer can go. So even though there are actually 2 other holes up here, if you're using the bar, then your max height is actually only going to be on the 11, unless there's something that I'm not understanding, but I think that that is accurate. And then 1 is still reasonably high off the ground. So depending on what you're hoping to get out of this, there might be some limitations with that. But overall, if you're just gonna come in here and squat or bench, really shouldn't have too much trouble setting that up. And otherwise, it's just going to function as your typical half rack on the front here. The pull-up bar is actually quite nice. So these come with a bunch of different knurled spots, which I really like. And the outer is a softer rubber on the handle. And it overall feels really nice. I have no complaints whatsoever with the pull-up bar. It's very sturdy. I'll also note that from an overall stability standpoint, and I was kind of worried about this initially, but loading up the front of this thing with weight and then me even hanging on the pull-up bar at 225, there's no forward tipping even without the weight being installed on the back because of how far out these bottom feet come. So normally on a 4-post or a 6-post rack, you're only going to be coming out to this front upright, and that can cause some issues with loading the front of the rack, causing it to tip. But because these front feet come out so far, there is really no issue with that whatsoever. So overall stability on this is actually better than I expected. Next thing we'll look at is the Smith machine. The first thing that I will call out here is that this is the highest point that this locks at, and I have to duck under this bar to walk underneath it. Not by a ton, but I do have to duck to walk underneath it. I think that that 5'11" is about the cutoff for not having to duck. So again, not a deal breaker, but just know that that is as high as it goes. And then it does come down to about here. So the other limitation is the bottom end of this, and I'll show some footage of me trying to do like some RDLs or some rows. I'm tall, and this is very high as a starting point for me. So if you're shorter than me, it's gonna be really, really high. You can set up some boxes or blocks to make this work, but from an RDL or deadlift variation standpoint, you're not really gonna have the greatest time off the floor with the Smith machine. That being said, the bar itself is actually very well knurled. I actually really appreciate the knurl on this bar. It feels reasonably smooth. I don't love that we're hooking into this really light gauge steel because, again, that could be a failure point in the future depending on how much weight that you're using. I also don't really love that when you unrack this, the hook itself can actually go directly into that sliding rod, which can cause a little bit of extra friction. It's not too bad, but it is something worth calling out. Overall, it's actually pretty smooth, and I will say that something in this price point, I was not expecting the Smith machine to be as smooth as it is. It actually feels pretty solid if you're doing bench press variations, squat variations, if you have a way to set up your feet to the right height to do row or RDL variations. The Smith machine is pretty solid. I also like doing weighted split squats with this because you can not worry, you can stop worrying about balance and really just hone in on that single leg that you're trying to train. So that's a really awesome way to use the Smith machine. And I think it's a great addition to this overall piece of equipment. And one of the reasons why I think this might be worth looking at in this price point. We'll also look at the functional trainer next. So we have two cable pulleys, one on each side that runs up to the front of the rack. These are fully adjustable. So we can pop the pin on the side here and then slide it down. It hooks into these points on the side. You would obviously need to remove the J hooks or the safeties in order to adjust that. Overall, the smoothness of the trolley is okay. Scale of 1 to 10, I would say this is probably a 6. So it's not amazing, but I wouldn't say that it's unusable. I used some silicone on the uprights here so that the weight is traveling as smoothly as it possibly can, made sure that we've got quality cable runs for everything and adjusted the tension to get it to my liking. And it's decent, it's definitely usable. And being plate loaded, you do have to have a number of plates that you're gonna have to adjust on both sides of this thing to keep the trolleys even. I did experiment with using weight on just one side at a time, and it's not great. So you really do have to keep things balanced, but provided you have equal amounts of both types of plates and you can do that on both pulleys, then this thing will actually run pretty smoothly. And it's, again, I'd say 6 out of 10 smoothness wise, but if you're coming from a place where you otherwise wouldn't have access to cables, then this is a no-brainer. It's just gonna be a ton of additional exercises that you can throw into your training and something that you can still use quite well, even if it's not going to be the smoothest experience in the world. Now, a couple other ancillary things that we have here. I love the fact that this included a landmine. Landmines add a ton of utility to your rack and they're super easy to equip. So the fact that this came with one out of the box is awesome. And then the foot plate on the bottom over here can stand up in order for you to do low rows. So you would just bring that cable trolley down to the lower point on the rack here and then sit on the floor and you've got your low row plate. In the back, like I said at the beginning, we have the tricep attachments, which work fairly well. Those hook into the sides of the rack here, and I can show one piece of this to make this a little bit easier to understand. So we have this going on the side, and then you can imagine the other one doing the exact same thing. And then I don't know who would actually be wide enough to use the outer grip, but the inner grip is actually kind of already a pretty wide dip, but it does work, it does function as intended. The leg press is a plate, let me walk around so I can show you the back of this, that attaches to the Smith machine bar so that you can perform vertical leg presses. And the way that it does this is through this latch. So this latches onto the bar, and because of that, there is a fair amount of instability with the plate on the bar. And I don't know about you, but one of the last things that I'm interested in doing is having any sort of unstable surface supporting hundreds of pounds over my face. So I would say that the worst aspect of this entire machine is the leg press portion. So if you are looking at this hoping that you are going to get a viable leg press out of it, I would limit your expectations. If you are using maybe 200 pounds, you might be able to, but again, even a vertical leg press itself, I don't think the movement itself is super valuable, but it is technically an option. It's something that I would stay away from just because I don't trust the foot plate and I don't want things slipping when I am directly underneath them. Now, the Smith machine does have built-in safeties, which I don't currently have engaged right here, but you can see that this hook can actually be set up. So if I place that right there on both sides, now we have limited depth on the Smith machine. So in the case of using the leg press, you would be able to set these up and it would be fine. But again, I don't love the setup and I don't love a vertical leg press. Overall, I think this is a really cool piece of equipment if you are somebody that has a small budget and a small footprint to fit equipment into. So this is not something that I would ever be shopping for, because personally, if I'm getting a rack, I am looking for something that is 3x3, 11 gauge steel, and something that I can 100% rely on and will always exceed my capabilities. This being 2x2, 14 gauge steel, I don't have that same level of confidence. However, if you are somebody that isn't using a ton of weight, or maybe you're relatively new to fitness, or you're definitely not interested in like powerlifting or anything like that, then this could be pretty decent for you. I mean, coming in at $1,000 is honestly crazy for everything that this is giving you. The types of materials that I'm talking about, 3x3, 11 gauge steel, if we're talking upgrades to aluminum pulleys, selectorized weight stacks, all of those niceties, getting a little bit taller so that I don't have to duck under the Smith machine, we're talking about machines in the $5,000 to $7,000 range. So this being a fifth or a sixth of that makes it an incredibly attractive price point for the right buyer. And you know better than anybody whether that makes sense for you. So if you are trying to be a power lifter and move serious weight, I wouldn't look at this. I would say save up a little bit more, maybe piece different things out. However, if you aren't somebody moving tons of weight, if all of your main lifts are less than 300 pounds, then this could be something that fits the bill for just about all of your training. You do have to make some concessions in setup time because you've got multiple stations involving the same space. But if that is the space constraint that you are building around, then this can work really well. It's got a lot of built-in storage and the ability to do a ton of exercises in a very small footprint. So overall, this definitely has a place for the right person. At this price point, it's pretty much untouchable for the amount of options that it packs in. You just need to be the right person for it. So I would love to know what you guys think. If you've used anything in this price range with this many options, what's your take been? Have you used anything with the 2x2 14 gauge steel? What has that experience been like? I'd love to see that in the comments. Let me know, and I will catch you guys in the next video.